오늘 전로 생계선에서 저걸 듣기 전화를 하면 지금 공성으로는 언제 동반 모를 진지로 연대 선택은 언제나 이번 같은 선택을 높은 분들에게 남이 좀 넣어서는 낙선 로이로 나출라지를 대롱형 내가 말씀드렸어. 되니 대롱 당가 소용 식당 기술 제도 전달아 성화근 기술들아 때문에 속속라도 드바장아 되니 기술 통통을 그 당가지 그러면 속속 제치 모습 장아 정가 타바 삼년 성나 내가 손을 지한다는 속 다른 자장은 요 대단 속이어지.
And so today here we are once again gathered during this extremely special sacred time and also a very fleeting time for us to accumulate merit and purify obscurations. And so as best we can, we should try our best to make practice and accumulate in as vast a way as possible.
저는 소반 소리에 대해 지금 소를 떠는 에너지와 그 정말 한국이 그래서 이나도 대하나 정말 장수를参加 그거는 단박심도 그 장수를 지지하는 게 있는지 단박심.
And so, of course, all of you already know how to gather and practice and how to accomplish virtue. But just in order to remind ourselves, and I will speak of the 3 sacred principles.
단박심 나의 딥시금 당하서 주발 명바 성그 주발 명바 책에다 정말 하고 그래서 하고 그래서 주발인 예정되다 하마고야 지금서 문제가 나오지 그래서 내 주발 사람들도 정말 직체나 하고 말해서 하마고나 정말 자주 지낸다는 디즈가 분단 프로젝트 특징이 아니었어.
And so the 3 sacred principles are something that all of you who are experienced Dharma practitioners must already understand. But for those of you who are new, you may not know these, and so you should listen carefully.
단박심 나의 대가를 위해서는 당분간서 주계와 강당강 등나양 대통마대가 다주라 생기단가지 대단가 동모드 되겠어.
The first sacred principle is that whenever one is going to engage in a Dharma activity or a virtuous activity, one must begin by generating the proper motivation.
다들 하리바가 가침보 초연에서 주라 생기단가게 대가다진이 가침보 초연에서는 등아서 주계와 강당강 등나양 등아서 다 함유되와 그 진리다 안로다 되네디 어떤 좀바 공통 토지를 진리다 안로다 이 상지 공통 토지를 진리다 안로다 아주 참마그나 주라 생기단가가 되어있어.
And so this first principle, the preparation of generating the proper motivation, is extremely important. And the reason is because whatever virtuous dharma we wish to do, that which will determine whether this dharma will create merit that causes us to be born in the gods or human realms, merit that causes us to be born to achieve the state of the arhats, or merit that will cause us to achieve the state of fully awakened Buddhahood. What determines the result, the kind of merit that this will create, is the motivation that we begin with.
많은 도야나 많은 거는 도나요 얘기한 도나요 우리는 겁나요 얘네들이 제대로 저런 겁나 뒤쳐들 말했어 소 생기게 잡아다 표현했어.
And so what determines the result of our actions when we do some kind of virtuous dharma activity is not whether we are reciting Mani or Vajraguru, 100 syllable, Dzogchen, generation stage or completion stage. All of these will be virtuous dharma, but what really determines their result is the motivation that we bring to that particular practice.
also the same thing that nasty somna tanga changes theory and pattern this ma diwan jong team is some of the children adila hami tabazina tadumi tabazina is the some forali tatakuyo mares.
Whenever we engage in a virtuous Dharma practice, if our motivation is merely for our own benefit, if we are thinking, may I have long life, may I be free from suffering and sickness, may I achieve happiness in the future, then whatever virtuous practice we do based on that motivation, it will only result in rebirth in the gods and human realms. So that's considered to be the vehicle of the gods and humans, that which results in birth as a god or a human. It will not result in anything beyond that. And it will not liberate us from samsara if we have that kind of motivation.
강성 프로가 그랬던 답이 치었던 게와 좀 산나 아무나서다 년도가 다 바진을 때라 년도가 다 바디나 다형 타라 투지스 마도 되게 이런 프로를 타라 투지스 마도 자라용 판도 그 말이다 선지 공동도 잘 에토탁 말이스.
Whatever virtue we are trying to accomplish, if our motivation is one of wishing, may I myself be freed from the three realms of samsara. If that is our motivation, then that virtue is considered to be of the vehicle of the hearers and solitary realizers. And so that motivation will result in merit that will bring about our liberation from samsara, but it will not benefit others, and it will not bring us to the state of fully awakened Buddhahood.
심진 단지 성지의 공통의 투비체도 내 성지의 공통을 듣고 있는 사람 이 제도 단계에 왔던 있는 사람은 다들 똑같이 먹을 수 있게 됐어.
So the third type of motivation is if we think to ourselves, I will accomplish virtue here today so that all sentient beings could achieve the state of fully awakened Buddhahood. I will achieve Buddhahood for their sake so that they all could achieve the same state. Then that is the motivation of the Mahayana or greater vehicle, and that will result in the state of Buddhahood.
대인바가 심지그 보니 그가서 추계와 강들나요. 많은 스카심 도나요다. 고라스 주시나요다. 피셔스팅 사나요다. 대네 다들 자치복은 초파. 마르진 야람 초파 마람 짐바 강당나요. 또 성나 또 성제 투표를 지내던 정도 있어. 심지 된다던다는
So if we have that kind of very vast and all-encompassing motivation, then any virtuous thing we engage in, even the smallest virtues, such as reciting a Bani mantra, or doing one circumambulation, doing one prostration, whether we make offerings to the Buddhas or whether we practice generosity to those who are in need, whatever action we do, it will become a cause of fully awakened Buddhahood.
심진 탐칠라에디 가리자라고 레이제나는 당아서 다른 거 무엇이바 등 다른 거 내용 등은 다른 거 쪽보 등 쪽모 대장 나오는 그 심진 탐칠에리즈는 그 심진 탐칠 말이에요.
But in order to have this motivation, first we must understand what we mean by all sentient beings. So does all sentient beings mean just only our own relatives, our own friends, those who we hold dear? It does not.
걔는 아주 머리스틱 바탕, 리자크스틱 바탕 정하면은 그 sentient 탐칠에리즈는 대형 말이에요.
Does all sentient beings refer only to those who are of the same race or of the same nationality as ourselves? It does not.
또는 딜리치에 디나가서 무청마다 사는 동안 그 sentient 탐칠에리즈는 대형 말이에요.
Even greater than that, if we think all sentient beings refers to all human beings, is that correct? That is not correct.
내가 심진 탐칠라에 가려면 그러잖아. 아주 무청마 인간 맞아. 내가 좀 로아를 좀 나니까 그 무동, 등루동, 타동, 타면동, 야라동, 이동. 네, 요즘 보고 심진 탐칠하면 받이라. 이 심진 탐칠하면 요 dim사고 그랬어.
So what is meant when we say all sentient beings? This refers to all beings, not just humans, but all beings in the 6 classes or the 6 realms. So this would refer to gods, jealous gods, human beings, animals, hungry ghosts, and hell realm beings. And so all of them together, with everyone included, is how we define all sentient beings.
Dentro sentient dela ta nan ki kar chaba dela sentient ke chaba res. Sentient kar chaba dela le dong nyomong ba chaba res. Timizo ampat dena res dena jachim boz res.
We should think that all sentient beings, we should think that however, wherever space pervades, it is completely filled by sentient beings. And wherever sentient beings pervade, they are completely filled by karma and negative emotions. That's how we should understand sentient beings.
Dena didi suna na so mupa na mupa sentient dela thai ba res. Sentient na tha za ba yong ar dena na so mupa dela tha me ba no char res.
So our visualization or understanding of sentient beings must be that they are completely limitless, completely boundless. And so that's how our notion of them must be as well.
Tene sentient ko tun tu samji ko samba ko titso layum kayo mares. Sentient ko tha zat masuno ba tang sentient ko tun samji ta sentient ko titso ko tha zat zeje ta na so shi go na shi ta ko yo ma tena.
If we think, well, when will we accomplish the benefit of all sentient beings, we must understand that time also is limitless. Because if the number of sentient beings is limitless, it's completely beyond comprehension, then the time when they will all be benefited is also beyond our comprehension. So we must understand that our focus, sentient beings, are completely limitless, and that the time when we benefit them is also completely limitless or without boundary. So if we have sentient beings as our focus, limitless sentient beings in a limitless time frame, then when we accomplish virtue, that virtue will also become limitless. Sometimes we might have doubts and think to ourselves, if I give my virtue to many, many sentient beings, then my virtue is going to become very small, because there's not much there to give, or I may have less for myself. But we shouldn't think like this. If our focus, sentient beings, is extremely vast, then our virtue will not be, it won't get smaller, it won't be reduced, it will actually increase. For example, if we recite one Mani mantra and we think, I'm reciting this for every single sentient being there is, if we really are focusing on all sentient beings being limitless, then the benefit of the one Mani will be visited upon every single sentient being equally, and so the benefit also becomes limitless. If we recite one Mani mantra and we think, I recite this with the wish that all sentient beings would achieve the state of fully awakened Buddhahood, then the merit of that one mantra will not be exhausted until all sentient beings achieve that very state. And why is this? It's because our focus is very, very vast. Our object, sentient beings, is very, very vast. And so in this way, then the power of whatever we do becomes very vast as well, until all beings achieve full awakening. So this is the case generally whenever we do any virtuous activity. How much more so is this the case when we practice on the special days, such as the special holidays, celebrating the Buddha's qualities, or celebrating Guru Rinpoche, the special holidays of the Dakinis. And in particular, right now, we are experiencing this very special time, this great celebration when our root Guru has achieved the state of parinirvana. And so on these very, very special occasions, it has said, the Buddha himself in many tantras explained that the merit, whatever virtue we do on these special occasions, is multiplied very greatly. And so, especially during one of these sacred times, as we're experiencing now, we must always remember to have these three sacred principles to our practice. Generally, everyone has to work and has very little time to practice Dharma. And so the little time that we do have to practice Dharma, we must be so careful to generate the proper motivation for this little chance we have to do virtue. So whether this virtue, this special moment of creating virtue that we have, whether it will be virtue that will ripen as achieving the state of awakening, or virtue that will ripen merely as ourselves being liberated from samsara, or virtue that will ripen as being born as a god or a human, or virtue that may not even result in that much. It all depends on generating the proper motivation. So during this special time, some of us are able to be here for an entire month, some people maybe for a couple of weeks, some for less time. But really, no matter how much or how little you are able to come, the first most important thing that you need is this first sacred principle of practice, which is to cultivate the proper motivation. Because if you do that, then even if you are here just for a short time, you will accumulate vast, vast merit. Generally, I think most of you understand what the three sacred principles are, but it's so easy even for seasoned practitioners to forget to do them if we don't remind ourselves from time to time. And so I myself have had a lot of experience with this. Sometimes I realized later that I forgot to dedicate my practice at the end, the third sacred principle. Sometimes I forget to focus in the middle, which is the second sacred principle. Sometimes I forget to generate the proper motivation at the beginning. And so if we are not careful, we can easily forget to do these principles.
돈도 전설에는 돈도 맨드스 쳐서는 좀 하고 말이스. 같은 돈도 매발처럼 뒤터 총을 말이스. 아, 이게가 디즈다 요그레스. 아니나 아서 지금 선진국 손 신도 챔버 전대는 돈들이 내가 개가 사람이 믿을 가는 말이야. 이나 같이 챔버 요새나 걸리 커버했어.
If we forget these three sacred principles, but we do a virtuous action, it's hard to know how much benefit it will be. It's hard to know what will really result from that. We know that there will be some small benefit because we know that there is some small benefit to every virtuous action. This is what the Buddha has taught. But it's hard to know exactly how that will ripen or what that will look like.
이나요, 당가서 그 심지도 그런 거 찾는데 이나 당가서 개와도 유사기 아따따가서 롱스가 그러면 그 학원을 해서 가리자 선지가 대할 소명가 지금 심지 내나제는 주 개와된 내나 친구 이 제우된 내나 정말이지 주 심지도 내나나 어떻게 개와된 내나리지 선지가 주나 할래바 가서 무슨 그래서 이나랑 좀 하고 그래서 심지 찾는 어디랑 개와된 좀 조용한 그런 거 좀 이치지는 그렇게 그랬어.
But if we do remember these three sacred principles, such as generating the proper motivation, we can really have confidence that our actions will be virtuous and will produce a great result. Because the Buddha taught, if your motivation is like this, you will get this much virtue. If your motivation is like this, you will get this much virtue. He taught exactly what that looks like. And so we'll be able to look at our motivation and determine how much virtue we can be sure, confident that we are generating. And so of the three sacred principles, this is the principle of the preparation of generating the proper motivation. And this is a very, very concise explanation of how to do this. There are actually many, many expansive teachings on this, but we don't have a lot of time today. So that was the first sacred principle. The second sacred principle is to have concentration or to have a view of a non-conceptual view during the main practice. And so this second principle, which is to have a view of non-conceptuality or to be without focus during the main practice, is the most difficult to do. And so to really do this, what we must do is we must have received an introduction to Rigpa, our own pristine mind, and to be able to maintain this understanding during the practice. So having that introduction to our own pristine awareness, that would be the Dzogchen view to be maintaining during practice. We also can maintain the view of emptiness, great emptiness beyond the four extremes during our practice.
the Nyomon Bando Charge from the Mungardi Choto Sena, so in Nyomon Bag Sender, the Mepachiculis, take a mention of the Tachiculis.
So those two would be the best way to have this second principle of engaging in the practice. But not everyone can do this. And so for those of us who are not able to hold these profound views, then when we are practicing Dharma, the most important thing is that we try to avoid the passions, the 5 passions, which would be desire, hatred, ignorance, jealousy, and pride. That we try to avoid these in our minds during practice. And along with this, we should be focusing on whatever practice we're doing. For example, if we are doing Vajrasattva practice, then we are supposed to be meditating on Vajrasattva. We should be focusing on Vajrasattva, the visualization of Vajrasattva, maintaining pure view in that, and maintaining single-pointed concentration on that. And so that also would be considered sufficient as the second principle. And so if we do our best to practice with faith and with pure view, and we do our best to recite the sadhana as best we can without leaving any words out or adding anything, doing the practice as correctly as we can, then that is sufficient as the second principle. And so, of course, the result of what practice we're doing, the result is really going to be determined by the motivation, the preparation of generating the proper motivation. That will determine the actual result of the practice. The second principle of actually engaging in the practice, this will determine whether the virtue created is considered to be defiled or undefiled. The third sacred principle is that of dedication. But today, unfortunately, we run out of time, so I will explain that on a different occasion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone.